From a promise of no maintenance required to the stark reality of no maintenance feasible within a few short years, the unfolding saga of electric vehicles is becoming clear. EVs were once hailed as the future of transportation, but with the way things are going, we might need to rethink that. Repairing these vehicles is very expensive, and in some cases, repair is not possible at all. Let's find out why this is happening with these 6 compelling reasons. Let's get into it. Number 6. Insurance houses' decisions reflect everything. Today's car makers give a multi-year warranty on their new electric cars, covering both the battery and the whole vehicle. For new buyers, this should give peace of mind, right? Well, not exactly, because the warranty does not cover everything. For example, repairs needed after accidents are not covered. That's where insurance companies come in, and if there's one thing we've learned from them, it's that electric cars are very expensive and complicated to take care of. After all, why else would the insurance premiums for electric cars be much higher compared to internal combustion cars? We're talking about differences that often amount to thousands of dollars. There must be a good reason for these high costs. Well, it turns out that repair shops don't want to waste their resources on fixing these cars. They would rather decide to write off damaged vehicles just to avoid dealing with high expenses, a lack of trained professionals, and the shortage of spare parts. It's much easier for them to write off the vehicle and charge a few more $1,000s from the owners. This way, insurance companies stay secure and avoid any hassle. And if you remember that video from a few months ago that showed a whole junkyard full of barely damaged Teslas, as well as some other reports, it's pretty clear that insurance companies don't want to deal with these vehicles. Things have come to the point where even a couple of small scratches are enough to send an electric vehicle to a junkyard, apparently. It's obvious that these companies would rather avoid the trouble and just get rid of the cars instead of fixing them. This shows how complicated and costly it is to maintain and repair electric vehicles. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video, do well to give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button to show your support. And if you've done that, let's continue. Number 5. Battery casing and sheet metal. As we just mentioned, damaged battery casings are the main reason why insurance companies write off so many electric cars. In most cases, we're not talking about any serious accidents at all. Many damaged electric cars roll into repair shops just fine, and it takes a very close look to see the damage. It could be just a couple of scratches, but that's already enough to make things complicated. This is why so many electric cars are written off instead of being repaired. Insurance companies don't want to take any risk with all the problems that can come up with damaged integral parts of batteries, including battery cells. Instead, there are 2 possibilities. Either write off perfectly fine vehicles, as we've already talked about, or replace the casing. The only problem with the second option is that it doesn't just cost a fortune, but many dealers don't even know how to do it. The problem with casings is that they are welded in such a way that there is no room for repairs. Replacement is usually the only very expensive option. This means that even small damages can lead to big costs, which makes insurance companies prefer to write off the car rather than fix it. While we're talking about fixing, let's not forget the body panels. With electric cars, most of the good old sheet metal is gone. Instead, modern electric cars have panels that are usually made of aluminum or some composite materials. These materials are either very hard or impossible to fix. 2 possible scenarios come up here. Body shops will most likely refuse to work on your electric car, and even if they accept, they will charge much more than they would normally charge for combustion cars with conventional designs. This is because the materials are difficult to handle and repair, making the process more complicated and costly. Number 4. Lack of trained technicians. Imagine a repair shop that employs several experienced car mechanics who have spent years learning their skills, and suddenly none of this matters. Electric vehicles are different and need different kinds of training. With their still modest presence in the market, most technicians don't want to bother with them. Instead, they choose to continue working on internal combustion vehicles. The exact numbers are still unavailable in the US, But we can look at markets like the UK, where the latest estimates suggest that only 10% of all mechanics are licensed to work on battery electric vehicles. With the current pace of electrification, the market will be short of 35,000 trained professionals in 10 years. Considering the slower rate of EV adoption, especially in rural areas, we may presume the number of trained professionals needed is probably even greater in North America. With an insufficient number of trained technicians, it's easy to conclude that finding one would take much more time. This means that people living in these areas might have to wait longer to get their electric vehicles repaired. Owners often have to travel tens or even hundreds of miles just to reach a repair shop. But once they get there, they face another very unpleasant surprise. Repair costs are much higher compared to the usual repair costs of combustion cars. There are many reasons for higher repair costs. Besides the lack of professionals, there's also the extra knowledge needed for the new technology. We shouldn't forget about safety concerns either, since mechanics have to work on high-voltage systems. Additionally, there is a possible risk of fire because of design flaws in complex electrical systems like batteries, inverters, and motors. All these factors contribute to the higher cost of repairing electric vehicles compared to regular combustion cars. Number 3, not reliable. Not all electric vehicle owners ditch their electric cars after the first breakdown. Sometimes it takes a few more breakdowns. Judging from the experience electric car owners have had, these breakdowns happen pretty quickly. Considering that the issues with electric cars are way more frequent than expected, contrary to what most experts were suggesting, electric cars are not more reliable and cheaper to run than combustion cars. Things are quite the opposite. Instead of being more reliable and cheaper, electric cars often face many problems. This makes owning them more difficult and expensive than people thought it would be. A big survey by Consumer Reports showed that electric cars have 80% more problems than combustion cars. The problems vary from battery and charging issues to software troubles and low build quality. Simply put, there's too much hassle with electric cars, and the only good thing is that most of these electric cars are still new enough to be covered by a warranty. Once the warranty expires, we can only imagine how much all these problems will cost. But it's not just about money. All these visits to dealers take time. Not to mention that electric cars often sit at the dealership for weeks waiting for the problem to be fixed, which honestly makes them practically unusable. Number 2, software issues. It may not exactly be a reason for ditching an electric car, but software issues are on a much greater scale than anyone expected. Just take a look at what has been happening at GM over the last few months. Electric cars are sophisticated vehicles with advanced systems designed to integrate the battery and electronic components of the car. In GM's case, it's been a problem that the company still hasn't overcome. The Blazer EV, Lyriq, GMC Hummer, and other electric cars from this manufacturer have faced so many software issues, and that's been an obstacle that the company has never managed to overcome. Batteries, charging, motors, regenerative braking, and driver assist features, it looks like GM never integrated all these things properly. We've seen numerous updates so far, but things are far from ideal. Just remember that the latest versions of GM's infotainment system don't support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto anymore. Another problem is that over-the-air updates are often not possible. Instead, owners are forced to leave their electric cars at dealers and often wait for weeks to get their cars fixed. This means that owners not only face software problems, but also lose the convenience of using their cars while waiting for repairs. These issues make it difficult for owners to enjoy their electric vehicles fully and create a lot of frustration and inconvenience. Once again, we can talk about the lack of trained personnel, but that's just part of the problem. In many cases, even the manufacturer doesn't know how to deal with software glitches and other malfunctions. It could take weeks before dealers get any feedback on how to solve a certain issue. During this time, the dealers are left waiting for guidance, unable to proceed with repairs. This delay means that the car owners have to wait even longer to get their vehicles back, adding to their frustration and inconvenience. The whole process is slow and inefficient, showing that there are still many challenges in the electric vehicle industry. The lack of quick solutions and proper support makes it clear that more work needs to be done to improve the situation for everyone involved. Number 1. Lack of support. From what we've seen during these few years of widespread use of electric vehicles, it's clear that support is not at the level it is for combustion cars. We've already discussed the lack of trained professionals, difficulty in solving problems, and the high cost of repairs. The issue is even more significant for startup companies that don't have established dealer networks or strong technical support in general. This lack of infrastructure and support makes it harder for electric vehicles to get the assistance they need, adding to the challenges of owning and maintaining these cars. It turns out that even minor damages can be extremely problematic for electric vehicles. Instead of getting fixed quickly, EVs often end up in junkyards. Once again, we can refer to the same video showing dozens of Teslas sitting in junkyards, despite having only minor damage. This video led us to the conclusion that soon all electric cars might be treated like ordinary vehicles, regardless of the manufacturer. Eventually, we could start treating them similar to how we treat other electronic devices, like old TVs or smartphones. As we mentioned before, many of these electric cars that are considered unusable are actually in good shape, especially their batteries. So you might wonder what happens to all these batteries. Some companies have started businesses focusing on giving these batteries a second life. Basically, they salvage most of the car and reuse the batteries for different purposes. Often these batteries are sold to people who enjoy building things themselves, who use them as storage systems for solar panels. It's a great chance for them to get a battery in excellent condition, especially since many of these electric cars that are considered unusable haven't been driven much. In short, it turns out that car makers spend a lot of money developing batteries that can be reused for solar panels. Alright guys, we've come to the end of this video, and if you enjoyed it, do well to click on the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to check out other videos on our playlist. We've got some amazing content for you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.